Their family belonged to one of the two ruling dynasties of Eastern Europe. Princes were of royal origin, a symbol of the Ukrainian lands and their uncrowned kings. Today's program, ProART, focuses on the exhibition project Ostroh Princes. Members of the Ostroh family are known as cultural and educational figures that played a major role on Ukrainian lands. Finally, we pay tribute to those people who created our history almost 5 centuries ago. Ukraine returns to the European house. The exhibition, presented in the National Kyiv-Pechersk Historic Cultural Reserve, is relevant as never before. It is dedicated to the largest Ukrainian family, the Ostroh Princes. The new exposition is devoted to a period that was not sufficiently investigated. This includes the Polish-Lithuanian period, when Ukrainian lands were part of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, which was a very powerful state in Eastern Europe, then a rich Pospolita. Indeed, this important period later played an important role in the historical evolution of Ukrainian lands. The exhibition and its title, Princes Ostroh, European Dimension of Ukrainian History, reflects the period when Ukraine was not even knocking on Europe's door. It did not enter it, but it was a part of that Europe. The period when Ukraine joined the composite of the Russian Empire was simply erased from the history books. Some separate legends of the Ostroh princes were preserved. As for cultural monuments, they were destroyed in several wars of the 17th century. The international cultural project aiming at rehabilitation of the tombstone to Prince Kostyantyn Ostroh prompted the creation of this exposition. He was the most famous in the family, Grand Hetman of Lithuania, an outstanding military leader, and the most celebrated hero of Ukrainian history in the 15th to 16th centuries. This project was really conceived to support another project aiming at rehabilitation of the tombstone to Kostyantyn Ostroh. But the Louvre considers the time of the Ostroh family to be of great importance. The family was closely linked to the Louvre and its monuments from the 15th to the 17th centuries. It should be noted that the aristocratic family of the Ostroh princes played a key role in the history of Ukraine, as they were courageous warriors, prominent military leaders, state figures and diplomats who developed education, science and culture on Ukrainian lands. The exhibition is devoted to Kostyantyn Ostroh, as well as his son and grandfather. The exhibition shows the family of the Ostroh princess that was closely linked to the history of the Kyiv-Pechersk Louvre. The exposition includes more than 200 exhibits from the National Museum of Ukrainian History, the National History Library. Among them are mainly artifacts in the originals. Iryna Shults complains that there are also copies because not all artifacts were found in Ukraine. Cooperation with museums of Belarus, Lithuania, Poland and the National Museum in Warsaw has led to exhibiting good copies of the originals that are stored in the collections of the above museums. Most importantly, Kyiv's hosting for the first time a copy of the painting The Battle of Warsaw from the National Museum in Warsaw. According to one version, the German painter of this work, Hans Krell, perpetuated the triumph in the glorious victory of the legendary military leader Kostyantyn Ostroh in 1514, who defeated the army of Moscow Prince Vasily III on the banks of the Dnipro River. Victoria Orshanska made the name of the Ukrainian hetman known throughout Europe. This painting is very interesting for the fact that the triumphant of victory Prince Kostyantyn Ostroh is depicted 3 times at different periods of the battle. This is still a rare phenomenon in art history. All 3 images show Prince Ostroh not wearing a knight's armor, because it is believed that the warlord was protected by the strength of his spirit. In addition to the battle, there are no psychological portraits as such, as the task was different. It was to convey and demonstrate the scope of both the battle and the victory of Prince Ostroh and the united troops. After the victory in the Battle of Warsaw, the hetman was also granted an exclusive right to triumphantly enter the capital of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Polish crown. This brilliant man lived an interesting life. I regret that we are bound by time to tell about his entire life, but it's interesting that he was first appointed as a Lithuanian hetman in 1497. He was the second person after the King of Poland, and at the same time he was the Grand Duke of Lithuania. The delegation from Lithuania was very interested in the exhibition. This common period in the history of both countries is important for developing cultural cooperation. The excursion presented by the art critic turned into a substantive conversation with highly educated and interested visitors who were MPs of the Lithuanian Seimas. I was pleased that both Ukrainians and Lithuanians found many new things at the exhibition opened in the reserve. I consider many exhibits to be unique and to make the public more aware of our common history. And when Ukraine is getting closer to Europe, I think this is the right time for this. In addition to outstanding military and political merits, the Ostrogsky dynasty was a representative and defender of orthodoxy in the Catholic state of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. The years of Kostyantyn Ostrogsky's rule are considered to be a golden age for orthodoxy in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Ostrogsky, like the Ostrogsky family, generously supported the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra. The exposition presents a commemoration book of the late 15th and early 16th centuries. It remains rare not only for Ukrainian collections. During his lifetime, Konstantin's name was included in the commemoration book. The above book of the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra is now stored in the historical library and, of course, is hidden from the public. Kostyantyn Ostrogsky's resources founded the installation of the iconostasis in the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra. It was one of the first iconostases in Ukraine that flared the imagination of those who saw it. In the 17th century, Patriarch Nikon even ordered a bronze copy of this iconostasis. At the moment, tragic events of the 20th century, which affected cultural and historical monuments, led to the disappearance of both the iconostasis and its bronze copy. Only a photo was preserved. What did the famous and world-admired Ukrainian ancestors look like? The brush of their contemporary captured their appearance, character and mood. Among the unique exhibits are portraits of the princely family. There are originals and copies of portraits, but the development of portrait genre is also associated with the Ostrogsky dynasty in Ukraine. It is believed that the first portraits were painted in the Ostrogsky family. Moreover, iconographic artists conveyed very accurately the facial characteristics of both the Grand Lithuanian hetman Kostyantyn Ostrogsky and his son Vasil Kostyantyn Ostrogsky, who was also a voivode of Kyiv for almost half a century. That is, he ruled Kyiv. Nobody ruled Kyiv as long as he did at that time. The grand portrait of Kostyantyn Ostrogsky depicted him holding a hetman mace. This is his only full-length portrayal that is housed in the Nestrezhsky castle. This room presents exhibits that tell about the life and activities of Vasil Kostyantyn Ostrogsky, the son of Kostyantyn Ostrogsky, who was a voivode of Kiev. According to historians, the Ostroh Princes belonged to one of the two ruling dynasties of Eastern Europe, but their family seat was the picturesque Volyn city of Ostrog over the river Vilya. There was their main residence. Vasil Kostyantyn Ostrogsky became famous for establishing their first higher educational institution, the Ostrogska Academy, in his castle in Ostrog, where Greek and Ukrainian scholars were invited to teach young people. The Ostrogska Academy paid much attention to the translation of books. He also funded the opening of the first printing house in Ostrog in 1578. Vasil Kostyantyn invited typographer Ivan Fedorov to print books. One of the most remarkable books of the Ostrog printing house is the Bible in the Slavonic language. The Bible was printed on Ukrainian lands in Ostrog. Before it had been printed in Venice or in Krakow, and this edition was printed in Ukrainian lands in 1581. There are a number of very interesting exhibits in our exhibition that visualize exactly that distant era, which we know very little about in the present day.
Очень интересных, любопытных экспонатов, которые раскрывают эпоху, визуализируют вот ту далекую эпоху, о которой мы так мало знаем.
Learning the names of people, you discover the spirit of an era that becomes no longer impersonal. These are powerful weapons used by brave warriors of the Ostrog voivode. Infantrymen in chain armor and solids skillfully used battle axes. Hiding behind shields of steel, they actively used two-handed Saxon swords and sabers. Armored cavalry destroyed all of its enemies with flanged maces and battle axes. It is totally possible that in this portrait Prince Ostroh was standing next to that cannon holding that mace or something like it. The exposition is full of numerous materials and historical maps, drawings, documents, books and others. Everything is related to this epoch. Among the rare exhibits is the personal stamp of Prince Kostyantyn Ostroh, donated by the Sheremetyev Family Museum. This is a unique exhibit because a personal stamp in those times was, first of all, a privilege of princely families, according to Shults. And the stamp was personalized. He had the right to put his stamp on red wax, which only kings were allowed to do. The exhibited stamp belonged to Kostyantyn Ostroh. The greatness of their family is also symbolized by sophisticated tombstones created by the best sculptors of that time. Hetman Kostyantyn Ostroh was buried in the Dormition Cathedral of the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra by his will, and his tombstone inside the temple was a piece of art. The tombstone stood in the Dormition Cathedral of the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra for 360 years. All travelers wrote about the greatness and beauty of this monument. This exhibition evokes the atmosphere of that time, which we considered the dark ages of our history. That is, we knew very little about this. The cathedral, destroyed during World War II, was restored in independent Ukraine. The Renaissance tombstone of the famous Ukrainian Kostyantyn Ostroh is waiting for its turn to be restored one of these days. He was a figure that greatly contributed to the history not only of Ukraine, but also of Central and Eastern Europe. And the fact that he will be properly honored in Ukraine is, of course, a great event. This exhibition and this high-level visit are related to the main idea of rehabilitating the monument to Kostyantyn Ostroh, which is presently the largest project in which the Lithuanian and Ukrainian sculptors are involved. And we believe that when this project is completed, it will become a serious focal point in Lithuanian-Ukrainian relations.
Серьезным акцентом в литовско-украинских отношениях. В книге отзывов я написал, что
In the guest book, I thanked those people who created our common history, and I thank those people who are involved in it and make it important today. Because we always look back in history to have a future. And of course, it is very important to create our common history in the future. The Ostroh family was represented by saints and military leaders, city founders and philanthropists. Time took away most of the historical and cultural testimonies related to them. And it's important for contemporaries to compile, to preserve and understand everything that has survived to the present day as lessons of the glorious past.